For the first time in over a decade, a massive new manufacturer is trying to break into Formula One. But here's the thing. They're not just fighting against the stopwatch, they're fighting the entire system. This is the incredible story of $1 billion bet on America's newest hope in the fastest sport on Earth.
Right from the very start, the door was slammed in their face. The existing 10 teams? They didn't want them. The people who run the sport? They didn't want them either. The message was loud and clear. There's just no room for you here.
But Cadillac and their racing partner Andretti, well, they just refused to take no for an answer. So the big question is, in a sport this exclusive, this walled off, how on earth did they actually manage to force their way onto the grid?
Well, the answer really starts with a number so big it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. $1 billion. And that's just the initial investment to get this thing off the ground. It's their weapon, for sure, but it's also the insane stakes of this entire gamble.
Okay, so what does $1 billion actually buy you in Formula One? Turns out, it disappears way faster than you might think. Let's break down exactly where that mountain of cash is going. The very first thing you have to pay is something called the dilution fee. And you have to think of Formula One less like a sport and more like a super exclusive franchise. This fee, it's the price of admission. It's a huge check you write to the 10 existing teams just to make up for the fact that they'll now have to split the prize money with a newcomer.
And that fee? Yeah, it wasn't cheap. It was recently hiked from $200 million all the way up to a staggering $450 million. A lot of people saw that as a move specifically designed to keep them out. But you know what? They paid it anyway. Just think about that for a second. Almost half of their entire initial budget was gone before they'd even designed a single part.
Okay, so with what's left, you have to build a team from absolutely nothing. And in this case, it's a global empire. The main HQ is in Indiana, and there's a whole new power unit facility going up in North Carolina. But F1 talent lives in Europe, so the core race team is based in Silverstone, England, right in the heart of what's called Motorsport Valley. And for the super important aerodynamics, they're renting a state-of-the-art wind tunnel in Germany. It's a massive, truly international operation.
But all those fancy buildings are totally useless without the right people. Cadillac has been on an absolutely aggressive hiring spree. They're aiming for over 400 employees, which is already bigger than some of the teams they'll be racing against. And to get the best engineers to leave places like Mercedes and Red Bull, well, you have to pay them top dollar, way above the average salary. It costs a fortune, but it sends a very clear message. We are here to compete.
So, you've got the facilities, you've got the people, but that's only part of the puzzle. To actually go racing, you need world-class drivers. And this brings us to the team's first huge dilemma. Do you go with proven, veteran experience, or do you bet on the future?
For their debut, they went straight for experience. And wow, what experience it is. We're talking about Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. Between these two guys, they have 20 Grand Prix wins. And more importantly, they've spent years inside the two most dominant teams of the last decade, Mercedes and Red Bull. For a brand new team, having that kind of knowledge, knowing how a championship team operates, that's pure gold.
But wait, there's a third name in the mix, a real wild card, Colton Herta. He's the young, absolutely fearless American IndyCar star. He was supposed to be the face of this whole all-American F1 dream.
There's just one tiny problem. Actually, scratch that. It's a massive problem. Despite all of his success back in the States, he doesn't actually have the special license you need to legally race in Formula One.
So, what's the plan? Get this. They're basically sending him back to school. Herta is going to compete in Formula 2, the main feeder series for F1, for the sole purpose of earning enough points to get that license. It's a huge risk, and honestly, a little humiliating for a proven star like him. But it just shows how badly they want an American driver. It also means from day one, Bottas and Perez will have the team's future golden boy breathing down their necks. So, getting the drivers and building the factories was tough, no doubt. But the team's biggest victory so far was simply getting a spot on the grid in the first place. That whole process was a brutal, multi-year political war.
This whole journey really started back in 2021. First, Andretti tried to buy an existing team. That fell apart. Rejected. Then, in 2022, they applied as a totally new team. The powers that be in F1? Rejected again. It wasn't until they came back with the full weight of General Motors and Cadillac that things finally started to change. And even then, it took another year of intense lobbying before they finally broke through. They didn't get in because F1 wanted them. They got in because they simply would not go away. And this quote right here from Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff, it sums up the opposition perfectly. It was never really about the sport, it was always about the money. The other teams just didn't want to split the pie 11 ways instead of 10. It was a closed shop, and Cadillac basically had to use a billion-dollar sledgehammer to break the door down.
So, after all that money, all that fighting, what can we realistically expect when the lights finally go out for their debut season in 2026?
Well, history actually gives us a pretty good clue. The last new team to join, Haas F1, shocked everybody by scoring points in their very first race back in 2016. How'd they do it? By buying as many parts as they were legally allowed to from Ferrari. And guess what? Cadillac is following a very similar playbook, starting out by running Ferrari customer engines for their first 4 years.
Now, this strategy, it's a trade-off. The big positive is you get a reliable, powerful engine right out of the box. But the downside is a serious loss of control. The team can't perfectly design their car around that engine, which hurts everything from cooling to aerodynamics. So in other words, they are knowingly starting on the back foot.
So, what's a realistic goal for 2026? It's not going to be podiums or wins. The real goal is just to finish races. It's about gathering data and building a solid foundation for the future. Honestly, if they score any points at all in that first year, it would be a massive, massive success. The real victory is building an organization that can eventually become a true contender down the road.
And that really brings us to the bigger picture here, because this whole project is about so much more than just lap times. It's about identity, and it's about building a legacy.
Look, Formula One has absolutely exploded in the United States. We now have 3 sold-out American races and a huge wave of new fans. But even with all that interest, the country has never really had a top-tier, manufacturer-backed team to truly call its own. And that is exactly what Cadillac wants to change.
This isn't just about sticking another car on the grid. For a giant like General Motors, this is about making Cadillac a symbol of American engineering excellence. It's about proving they can take on the historic giants of Europe. We're talking Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and win. It's about turning all that national pride into real global performance.
When you boil it all down, it's a monumental gamble. It's a billion-dollar bet that America can not only compete in Formula One, but actually build a lasting legacy at the very pinnacle of motorsport. And the only question left to ask is, will it actually pay off?